and other paranormal phenomena through the eyes of witnesses, investigators, critics, and skeptics. Join us as we look to discover what lurks from behind tall trees. All right, good evening and welcome to From Behind Tall Trees, the super chat that does not play favorites. It's the Bigfoot show that gives everyone a chance to speak their mind, present their evidence, and tell their story, which in turn allows you, the viewer, an opportunity to make an educated decision as to what you believe. This show looks to stomp out confirmation bias and general Sasquatch stupidity. And who knows, we just might find out what's really going on when it comes to this Bigfoot thing. So here we go. Good evening. I am Brendan Brown, founder and director of the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective. We call it the CARC. I will be your host for tonight's trip down into the rabbit hole. Riding shotgun with me tonight is in the co-host seat is a guy that needs no introduction, especially in the northern New Jersey, Sussex County area. He is by far the nicest guy currently in the CARC. My good friend and yours, Jonathan Charles Larson. We call him Big Chuck. Good evening, Chuck. How you doing?
Brendan, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to tonight's show. How are things going with you over there, down there in Jersey?
That was great. Yeah, we're doing well. We're doing well.
It's a beautiful day today. I mean, it was 63 degrees. It's 60 degrees right now. It's got a light breeze. Got a little bit of the allergies going on with me, so I'm on the Flonase, so bear with me.
Yeah, no, trust me. Every morning I take mine.
I am so happy because we have our guest currently backstage. The microphones, the cameras, everything's working. We are locked and loaded for a freaking awesome show.
Yep, it was great. Last night's rehearsal went great, and I was like, don't touch anything.
Yes, if you didn't know, we had a little technical difficulties with our guest last show, and we apologize for that, but we got all that shit behind us. So here we go. But now, before we get started, I'd like to take care of some business from the home office out there in Colorado. And to do this, we here at the show need to ask all of you out there a favor. As most of you know, this show and the entire BXP channel is really made possible through support from the viewers that are watching the show, like you guys. So liking, subscribing, and sharing the content that we produce here is really important to the survival of this show and others like it. This show is a super chat, so if you've got any questions at any time, put them in the chat section. Try to use all caps, please, because it's a lot easier for us to find them. And if you put a question in there, we'll do our best to have the guest address it. And we've got a really smart guest tonight, and we're going to bring him out very soon. And if you're feeling generous and you got a little pocket cash, hit that donate button, donate to the show, and we'll give you another huge shout out. Those donations made during the show support the CARC and help us finance our investigations and productions like this. So hit that button, make the donation, help us out, and feel good about it. All right. Now that that's done, now that we've paid the bills.
It's another Marla and the toast, man.
Exactly. Well, here, let's do that right now. Let's get the toast up. Put it up. Get your glass up there. Anybody's got a drink? I've got a cocktail. Chuck's got a cocktail. Everybody out there, raise them up. Let's go.
It's a good show.
It's going to be a great show. We've got tonight's guest is a member of the old guard. When it comes to investigations done back in the early days of Bigfooting, this guy's a legend. He's a legendary researcher who has hosted and appeared on dozens of television and radio shows. His podcast, On the Shoulder of Giants, Talking Old Timers with Thomas Steenberg, really, you can hear it on Monster X Radio. It is honestly one of the best podcasts out there. He does it with a good friend of ours, Julie Wrench. So you should check that out. He's also authored no less than 3 books, 2 of them which I'm in the process of reading right now. We'll talk about those later, about Bigfoot, or Sasquatch, as they call him north of the border up there in Western Canada. And that's exactly where this old school researcher hangs his adventure hat. So without further ado, I give you Mr. Thomas Steenberg. Thomas Steenberg. Sorry. Good evening, Tom. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Sorry, just messing with you.
Playing the asshole card. It's a little early to be playing the asshole card.
I thought we were watching a Godzilla movie from the 70s.
Yeah.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing fine, sir. How are you?
Great. like I said, we apologize for last week's debacle. We got it all behind us, so we're going to push forward. How is everything up there north of the border?
Doing pretty good. We still got a lot of COVID restrictions going on here. just had my second shot, so hopefully all this nonsense will be over with, and maybe they'll even open up the border and I can go down to Washington a few times or something like that. Yeah,
That's I can't believe that you cannot cross the border. I lived in Seattle, like I said, I lived in Seattle for 16 years, and I remember driving up to Vancouver all the time. And I can't believe that you can't come and go to this date. It's crazy.
well, it is, but they had to do something, I suppose, and they try to control it. It's taken a long time. I'll just be glad when it's all over with. In 2021, won't have sucking like 2020 did.
Well, at least you got plenty of hockey to watch, right?
Oh, absolutely. National religion up here in Canada.
Exactly. It's like an 11-month season. Hey, so I saw a recent Facebook post. I think it was a couple days ago that you're getting out in the woods. It looks like you and some friends were getting back out in the woods. You want to fill us in on what was going on?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's an area we like to go to here. I usually concentrate in the lower mainland because I don't travel over. Besides, right now, because of COVID, I can't. We're all supposed to stay within our medical region. I can't even go to other parts of BC right now. But there's an area here that not too far. I won't say exactly where it is because we kind of like to keep it a secret so people will not go up there and try to play tricks with fake prints and things like that. But we're going out and re-exploring areas we've been in the past. And what you saw on Facebook was just was a buddy of mine. We call him Big Jason. And getting high centered in one of the tank traps are all over the Forest Service roads up here. Because when they stop logging, they usually remove the culverts and leave the ditches.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because they're basically trying to deter people from going into these areas, but that doesn't stop us, so we go anyway.
Right.
And again, in that area where we were, it's an area where the one time we were out and we actually had rocks thrown in our direction, but we never saw what did it, and we couldn't find an explanation for it. Because I've caught a number of people hoaxing rock throwing over the years. And this one actually happened to us. That was like in 2016, and we still wonder about it because we didn't see anything. All we had were rocks coming, winging through the trees, and then they seemed to come from the other side of the road, but they didn't fall really anywhere near us, but in our general vicinity.
Now, how big were these rocks?
They were pretty big, like baseball size. A lot of them were. They were
Really?
actually knocking cones and bits of the trees out high up when they wing through. Yeah.
Wow, that's freaking. You hear that all the time, and there's different schools of thought. I think they talk about the rotation being like it's tossed underhand, like a softball. I guess a softball pitch. It's really crazy that something that big would be thrown in and you would not be able to find the source.
Yeah, absolutely. And we looked, believe me, and we saw nothing. So I can't say the Sasquatch is responsible for it, but if it wasn't Sasquatch, it had to be a man or a human, and we saw nobody. There was one old man way up at the head of that road, and it was his job to keep people like us out of there because this was a brand new logging road that they were going to cut, and they hadn't cut anything in there, so it was just solid trees the whole way down.
Mm-hmm.
And he was surprised to see us there. I said, "Were you throwing rocks?" He said, "No." And then later on, when we went back and there were some clear cuts, we saw how actually far away he was. He would have had been the greatest outfielder in history to throw them rocks down where we were. So no, it wasn't him.
And it's such, you're up there in the Pacific Northwest, up in BC. You said this happened. You got some thick, big, old growth forests up there. And you've worked with some of the other great Canadian researchers. You've had the lucky. You're kind of the old guard, right? You've worked with John Green, Renee DeHinden, Bob Titmus. Was John Green Canadian?
Yes, he was, and. So was Rene. Well, he was a Swedish immigrant who got a citizenship when he migrated here in 1955. Bob Titmus was an American citizen who got a citizenship, and he actually came up here permanently in the BC, British Columbia expedition sponsored by the late Tom Slick. Right. The Pacific Northwest expedition in the late 1950s in Northern California. And he was up. Yes, I knew all these gentlemen, and I did work with them all. And one of my achievements, I like to say, is I was able to be friends and colleagues with all these guys, and I never got sucked into their personal wars, because half the time you put guys in the same room together, you know.
It's the stories. If you think about it, and it's such an amazing. I'm actually in the middle of reading Don Hunter and Renee DeHinden's book, the Sasquatch book, this little paper book here, and it's amazing. But if you think about it, I don't know if a lot of the new Bigfooters, a lot of people out there, are really completely understand the amount of work that was done and the amount of history surrounding like the 60s and 70s and 80s, and the mountain of research that you guys were able to put together, with no internet, right? You had to pay for long distance phone calls. You didn't have a cell phone, right? You had to handwrite everything, no computers, and you had boots on the ground. I mean, literally, and probably all this done on regular gas, right? Like 79 cents a gallon.
Absolutely. In a lot of ways, I missed it, because even though the woo factor has always been there, or as I call it today, the inmates running the asylum, they weren't nearly as many of them as there is today. And there was only a few, and we knew who they were and how to deal with them.
Right.
But, it was basically, we have boots on the ground and going out, and everybody was zoological, like I am, and looked at this mystery for that way. Why these men were so angry at each other all the time, I'll never understand, because they had so much in common. But I think Randy was a big reason for that.
Well, there's got to be, like you said, you were lucky to work with these amazing characters, and you were very close to John Green, correct? I mean, you and John spent a lot of time together.
Absolutely, and Randy DeHinden, yes, as well.
Right. And there's a funny story I read, and I was hoping that you could share, with Renee and John and a shotgun. How they tended their friendship. I'd like to see if you could elaborate on that.
It kind of ended their partnership. They still talk, but they
walk us through that, will you?
Yeah, they never really talked after this. It was during the Blue Creek Mountain Track investigation during August, September of 1967. Just a few weeks before the Parrish and Gimlin film was shot.
Mm-hmm.
They were all down there, and John Green, Rennie DeHinden, a man named Dale Moffat, and a tracking dog named White Lady flew down there in a private plane from Chilliwack by a man named Keith Gazzara. And Keith Gazzara flew them all down there, and he's the man you see carrying the shotgun in a lot of that footage, the Blue Creek Mountain footage. But what happened was, on a blistering hot day, and it was mighty hot, I think it was like almost 40 degrees Celsius. It was so hot down there. Then, for some reason, while they were out looking at these tracks one of these days, John and the rest of them all jumped into the Jeeps and took off to do something else. I never really got it clear what, and they left Rene out there.
By himself?
By himself. So he was stuck out there for about 6 to 7 hours,
Oh, pissy.
Yeah. So when they came back, Rennie stuck that shotgun in John Green's face and said, "You ever do that to me again, I'll blow your damn head off." and of course, John's attitude was, "I wasn't going near him after that." And Rennie became such a pain in the butt that John actually had Rennie fly back in the plane after it was all done with Keith Gazzara when John Green rolled back in Dot Abbott's car.
Now, with the Blue Creek Mountain, what was the circumstances behind them getting out there?
Well, they had been down there just about a month or so before that, looking at tracks at Onion Mountain. And they got a phone call from, his name's gone out of my head just at the moment, but he said, "Hey, what you're looking for is here again." And so John got in contact with a newspaper, and they gave him a few $100 to rent a plane, and they all flew down there again. Mm-hmm. And that's when all these tracks were found on Blue Creek Mountain. There was like over 1,500 of them, and they seemed to be the tracks of two individuals. One set of tracks was more like 17 inches long, and another set of tracks was just over 13 inches long. And they were all on that same road, and they thought they came to the conclusion that they were probably authentic. People have come out afterwards and years afterwards, saying, they were faked. It was they were all faked and stamped and stuff like that. But if you look at the tracks, there's no sign of outburst from each print. Like if you were stamping them, you would have gotten with a solid thing. They're all nice and smooth. And of course, in Northern California in those days, they didn't harden their Forest Service road. It was probably the best place in the world to find footprints. And there used to be a joke in the old days. If you want to see a Sasquatch, go to British Columbia. If you want to see its footprints, go to Northern California.
I think you sent me a picture of the pilot looking at the tracks.
Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there, I think I have a different picture. But yeah, so those tracks, and that was shot. This all happened prior to Patty and the Patterson-Gimlin film, correct?
This is all late August, early September of 1967, and
Right.
the film was shot October 20th, 1960.
Right, because we're going to get into that. Because as you know, we had one of your good friends, M.K. Davis, was on a couple of weeks ago, and he has a little bit different opinion. We're not going to get into that just yet, but we're going to give you, Tom, a chance to set the record straight when it comes to the Blue Creek Mountain and the Patterson-Gimlin and the killer attack dog and all those things, and color correction. We're going to get a little bit farther down the road. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Super Chat Live. We have one of our good friends, Tom Steenberg, is with us, joining us tonight. If you guys have any questions, chime in. Don't be afraid to let us know what's going on, and we'll take it from there. That's such a funny story. I can picture just Renee just being. I mean, I would be furious if that happened to me. You're sitting out there for 6-8 hours and wondering where the hell they went to go. I'm sure Dan Perez was on a little while ago. And I know that you were out with Dan, and Dan is a great guy. He's such a lovable. He's easily one of the most likable guys in Bigfoot, I think. But I know you have a funny story regarding Dan. I'd like to see if you could share that with everybody. We talked about it a little bit earlier ago. If you want to retell that.
Well, Daniel's a great researcher from California.
Yes.
He's been in this almost as long as I have. I first met him at the '89 ISC conference at the University of Washington State in Washington. But when he was up here not too long after the Mike McDonald incident in 1997, we were all at the conference in Vancouver, and we all got a chance to talk to Mike McDonald while we were there, and we all decided to go to the site and have a look around. So Daniel Perez was there, John Green was there, myself, and a guy named Gabe who used to come out with John a lot. And we're all sitting around there after spending the whole afternoon searching, sitting around a little campfire there. And I just decided, well, Daniel's from California. He's basically a city boy. Let's have a little fun. I looked at John and winked at him and said, John, isn't this the area where Big Red killed all those guys? And John goes, yeah, I think so. And of course, Daniel had to take the bait and say, who's Big Red? Who's Big Red? Only the meanest, deadliest grizzly bear this side of the West Coast mountains. How many men has he killed, John? I don't know, 12 at least. I don't know if Daniel fell for it, because he and I ended up staying out there overnight in my tent, and I had my old Land Rover then. I had my tent, and Daniel stayed in my tent, and I stayed in the Land Rover. But just before it got dark, we're walking down that old path that Mike McDonald was on when he had his sighting. And we went around a corner, and there was a black bear standing looking at us right in the middle of the road. And Daniel yells, "It's a bear!" And I was going to take a picture of it, and all I got was its butt disappearing as it disappeared in the bush. And I looked at Daniel. I said, Daniel, if we see a Sasquatch, for God's sakes, don't yell out.
You had them all keyed up looking for a giant bear.
I don't know if that story had something to do with it, but yeah, I think so.
You missed those. You missed those years, Tom?
Yeah, because I was younger and I had a lot more energy. Yeah. I just turned 60 last May, so yeah.
Well, you look great, and you're getting out there. You're keeping busy. I mean, that's the main thing,
Yeah.
It's funny to hear these stories, but from somebody that's gone through all this stuff. Obviously there's a lot of different researcher groups. Is there any particular group up there that you feel might be, getting it right, whether it's your group or somebody else's group that gets out and you feel is on the right track or doing things the proper way?
Well, in my opinion, there are a lot of groups doing good work, and there are a lot of groups who are absolute, like I said, inmates running the asylum. It all depends on who you're dealing with. Me, I recommend up here in British Columbia a group called the British Columbia Scientific Cryptological Club with John CARC III as their president. And in the United States, the best group I could think of is the Olympic Project in the Olympic Peninsula of Washington, and the Bluff Creek Project's been doing a lot of good work down there in the site.
Yeah.
Down there in Northern California, they're all doing good work. Yeah, but there are a lot of good researchers out there. Unfortunately, today there are a lot more weird ones.
Well, that's what we were talking about. It's unfortunately there's with social media, the advent of social media, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You have a lot more people paying attention. I do think you have a lot more Bigfoot fans as opposed to researchers,
Yeah.
which is fine, I guess. But there's a lot of, like you said, the woo is getting a little bit carried away. But, like I said, there's a lot more people out there in the woods. I do know, it's funny because I do know of some groups. Well, the CARC is a relatively small group. But I know some groups that are online that have close to 9,000 members, right? But if they try to put together something in the field, nobody will come out. Nobody, they're just online. They might check it and go away. So they're not really researchers as most. It's kind of a chat group, a fan group, stuff like that.
To me,
what's that?
Go ahead. You were finishing?
Yeah, so I was saying, so most of your research is done in Western Canada. Obviously, you're locked up there because of the COVID. What do you think? I want you to be honest with me. First of all, I want you to tell me the obvious answer to why that part of North America is so indicative to Sasquatch sightings. And then the second part of that is that I want you to be honest. I don't worry about hurting anybody's feelings. Do you honestly, as your personal opinion, do you think it's feasible that a creature like Bigfoot can occupy territory, let's say, east of the Mississippi?
I think now that it is possible, but I'll confess when I started up until about the mid-1990s, I was an absolute agnostic on anything east of the Rocky Mountain foothills.
That's understandable.
But good researchers like Don Keating and the group in New York, and Diane Stocking-Niece, who was in Florida for a long time, had me scratching my head, and I said, this sounds good. And then I got to visit the Pine Barrens in New York, and I thought, I always pictured the eastern United States.
Had to say the Pine
Barrens. Canada, there's a lot of work. The eastern United States is like Europe, all built up towns with little batches of trees in between. No, it is huge, vast wilderness, and the towns are little patches in that wilderness. So it's around. So yeah, I've changed my opinion on that. I still think the answer is mainly here in the Pacific Northwest. And if the Sasquatch does indeed exist, I think there's more of them here. But I do think it's possible that it does exist elsewhere in the eastern part of the continent as well.
Now, do you think it's a different strain, like a different branch, as like the skunk ape down in Florida?
It's hard enough to accept the Sasquatch. There may be little variant differences based on isolation and inbreeding and things like that. Like if you talk to, like you've heard of the Falk Monster, Folk, Arkansas, right? Mm-hmm. And you go by that docudrama in 1973, it gives you the impression that all the tracks are three-toed. That's actually not true. Most of them were regular five-toed. Every now and then a three-toed track would be seen. The same thing for the skunk ape in Florida. So I think we're dealing with the same thing. There may be certain environmental differences. After all, the rainforests of the west coast of British Columbia is quite a different environment to the swamps of the Sulphur River bottom and the Everglades of Florida. So there's probably like differences based on isolation and location. But other than that, no, I think it's all the same thing. I think a lot of the early stories of the eastern from part of the continent about wildmen and stuff were just automatically lobbed in with Sasquatch by John Green and stuff when he wrote his books back in the late 60s, early 70s, when they may indeed have been talking about something completely different.
Right.
Yeah. But to me, if the Sasquatch exists, if you've got an area that can support a population of black bears, you can have a Sasquatch.
Fair enough.
Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, in your opinion.
Yeah.
Well, so that being said, we touched real quick on the Blue Creek Mountain stuff. I wanted, and I promised you equal time, and we're going to get to it right now. If you've just joined us, Tom Steenberg's with us, and we're going to talk about MK Davis and the Bluff Creek Massacre. I say that without laughing. MK was a cordial, very nice guy, likable guy. Tom's taking a big swig of his. Is that your Tim Hortons?
That's my tea.
I'll take a sip of my tea too. Hang on a second. Yeah. And he's a very likable guy, but here comes this Bluff Creek Massacre, or the Massacre of Bluff Creek. I know your opinion differs, and now I want to give your chance. I know a good friend of yours, the late Bill Miller, did a great paper. You and him worked on the paper together. I think we have a picture of you and Bill. There's a picture of you and Bill right there. What is that print you're holding up there? Is that something you guys cast yourself, or can you see that?
That's just one of two cast Roger Patterson cast the day he shot the film on October 20th.
Okay, so let's talk about the lack of evidence and your opinion. Now I have some slides and some pictures that you sent me with the pilot, the proof of the pilot, all that stuff. Let's walk us through what really happened and with the two different films and the go.
Okay, this is what I believed happened. We kind of blame ourselves a little bit for this, about how this whole massacre, MK came out with this whole massacre nonsense. At the time we were working on this book, the Bigfoot Film Journal.
Okay.
Christopher L. Murphy. I was doing editing work on it for him. And through him, and that time we all had a high regard for MK because he had done great stabilization work beforehand on the Patterson Gimlin footage.
Which is why he won Bigfoot of the Year, right?
Right.
In 2007?
Yeah, and one of the things we sent him through Chris Murphy and Rick Knoll, we sent him a lecture copy that John Green had put together in the early 70s for public speaking purposes. Remember, this is before the internet, before any of that. So when you gave a public talk, you showed slides from a slide projector, you showed movies from a film projector, right? Mm-hmm. John Green had this lecture copy that was 7 different films all spliced together, and the Patterson Gimlin footage was on it. And a lot of the Blue Creek Mountain footage was on it as well, from August, September 1967.
And I have some stills that you sent me, so if you at any point want me to put them up, just let me know.
Right. Now, what happened was none of the Blue Creek Mountain footage before this time in 2009 had ever really been seen on the internet before. I believe MK was looking at that Blue Creek Mountain footage, not realizing what it was, and he was looking at what he thought was never before seen portions of the Patterson Gimlin film. Mm-hmm. Okay? And he came up with this wild cockton's theory that they were all down there, and but as far as he was concerned, and others like David Pilates and the late Bobby Short all got in on it. And we first heard about this because Pilates and Bobby Short were sending strange emails to John Green saying, "Hey, John, you got to come clean about what really happened in October." And John had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And they're sending messages to Al Hodgson and people like that. And of course, Al Hodgson was a friend of ours, so anything they said to him, we heard about it. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, this wild theory came out about that John Green, Rennie DeHinden, and Bob Titmus were all down there, and they had shot a whole family of Sasquatch, and Titmus had skinned them there, and they buried the evidence, and basically spent the next 40 years saying we need a body or a piece of the body, even though they had found the evidence right there. I mean, it was just tinfoil hat nonsense as far as I was concerned. We couldn't believe it, and they wouldn't listen to us. And so what happened was we started telling you, hey, you're completely off the rocker on this. This is nonsense. And they looked at the Blue Creek Mountain footage and the film clips of Keith Kazera, the pilot. And because he kind of looks from profile kind of similar to Titmus, they assumed Titmus was there.
Okay, that's up on screen now. Is the slide that you showed me?
Right. Yeah, and you see the little insert, Bob Titmus, and what he looked like. Bob Titmus was in his late 40s, of that time, and Keith Gazzara was in his late 20s. And Keith Gazzara is a very tall man. He's 6 feet 5 inches tall. He's almost as tall as Green. Whereas Bob Titmus was actually 2 inches shorter than I am. He was only 5'6". Mm-hmm. But they insisted, and they said their unnamed experts confirmed that this was Bob Titmus. And I said, who are your unnamed experts? M.K. Davis and Pilates? You know, and they were all, and we published. So we decided we're going to do something about that. It was Bill Miller's idea. We should write an article telling what we know. And it came out, and here's a copy of it right here. The Massacre at Bluff Creek, exposing this tinfoil hat theory and what complete utter nonsense it was. And we showed that it was a guy named Keith Gazzara who was the pilot. And we even published his logbook.
I have that right here. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, they were all in the article. Yeah, go ahead, put that up.
Okay, let me find it here for a second. Yeah. There it is. All right, so there's the logbook.
Yeah, there it is. And you look down and you see Orleans, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. That's the flight logbook for that trip, flying John Green.
Right there.
Yeah, Rennie DeHenden, Dale Moffat, and the tracking dog White Lady all down to Orleans, California, and they landed the plane there, and they went by Jeep and truck to the Blue Creek Mountain site. Right. And Keith Gazzara, he didn't really want to sit and camp by his plane for a week, so they said, come on, you can help us. And he went along, and it's him you see mostly carrying the shotgun and Rennie DeHenden's Blue Creek Mountain footage. But according to M.K. Davis, this was, and he denies it now.
Well, he was. We had him on the ropes. I'll say.
Well, he's in major damage control. He says, "How do we know this? How do we know that? How do we know it?" Well, we got the word they even shot a film in October 1967. Where was the film developed? No one knows. Well, I can tell you where the film was developed. It was filmed at the Ford Motion Picture Lab at 306 Fairview Avenue, North Seattle. I can even give you the damn phone number if you like.
See, and that's the thing is the report that you and Bill did was, I mean, it really nailed it on the head, and that's why I'm hoping that people that that watched the show, the MK Davis show, as late as MK went on, can understand the other side of the fence right now with what Thomas is talking about. So, so go ahead.
Okay, it's bad enough he had this weird, wacky theory, and he wasn't going to admit he was wrong, but he took stills from the Blue Creek Mountain footage and messed with the contrast and intentionally made the water look red. And he made the pilot's hand, who he was claiming was Bob Titmus at the time, made his hands look red.
Yeah, I got that one. We can pop up there too.
Right. And of course, they're all saying this is Bob Titmus at the time. And they made his hands look red. And the one on the far right are clear non-tampered version of that film. You see his hands aren't red at all. But the biggest way you can tell he tampered with the contrast is that light brown pickup truck in the background looks bright blood red too. So
well, the story was that the dog attacked.
That was the time. And if you look at the whole footage, the dog is just wagging his tail and jumping up and he's petting it. And he's petting it. And then later on, you see what Moffat walk White Lady past this puddle of water, and he made that all look red and said that was some of the discarded carcass, and the dog's attracted to it. It says, no, it's not. It's just a puddle of water. If you look at the untempered version, you even see the dog's reflection in it. Now, a lot of people don't like to, it's bad enough it came with this theory, but when you alter images to give a false impression of what people are looking at, that's hoaxing by any definition I know.
Amen. Yep.
So as far as I'm concerned, we caught M.K. Davis red-handed hoaxing. That's just my opinion, and I have no more time for the guy.
Exactly. So I want to thank you for first of all for putting that stuff together and really doing the due diligence. When I booked MK, and to be fair, he's a likable guy. He's not a monster. I'm not making him out to be a monster. But I edit videos. I do that for work, and I stare at screens all the time. and you always start playing tricks on you. And I did do a little research, and I noticed that his YouTube page is Green Wave FB 2010, which is the local high school football team's mascot, 20-team football. And so prior to him putting this stuff out, he had just, I think it was bad weather and high school football highlights on his YouTube channel. I think what happened is he started putting this stuff together, started getting getting views. I think he's up over, 7 million views now on his channel. And I think he got addicted to it. I mean, right? Everybody's paying attention to me now.
Tell you the truth, I think he was a little upset because it was basically Pilates and Bobby Short who broke this.
Well, Pilates started the whole thing and then backed out. Yeah.
And he and MK was kind of dead quiet the whole damn time. Like let's see which way the river runs here. And Pilates, to his credit, when we started exposing and wrote the article and showed how stupid this whole thing was, Pilates, instead of just admitting he made a mistake, he just went dead silent on the whole thing.
He did, but he was the one that originally said, listen, we have experts that we know much more than you think we know. And he was kind of poking the bear with the emails to John Green that we talked about. I talked about when we were waiting for MK to come on. And then, like you said, and then he went ghost. Yeah.
And he wrote an email to John Green saying, John, I don't know where you're hearing this. We never accused you of keeping I never accused you of keeping a big dark secret, unknowing that we know El Hodgson. And we looked, what about this email? And we put this in the article too, where he accused John Green of keeping a big, deep, dark secret. So, yeah, it was just major damage control. And it kind of ended my friendship with the late Bobby Short, because we always got along great too. And she was a great lady and a researcher, but she got sucked into this, and I don't know why. And she just wouldn't listen. She just wouldn't listen. And I'm sorry. And, fortunately, she passed away. And this is, in my opinion, a dark cloud on her legacy. And she's great because she's the one that got John Chambers to admit that he had nothing to do with any makeup on the Patterson Gimlin film before John Chambers died.
Right.
Yeah, he's the man who did the special effects for the first Planet of the Apes film.
Mm-hmm.
So Bobby Short is hats off to her for getting that done. But why she was sucked into this tinfoil hat nonsense theory. And even MK, after this, there's video of him down at the Bluff Creek site after this massacre Nazis came out, and he's talking and acting like it never happened.
Well, that's what was going on a couple of weeks ago. Is he was kind of stepping back from it, and the way we started the interview, I know you watched it, is we kind of didn't want to jump on him right off the bat, but then you could see him kind of glaze over and kind of, because he did a lot of the videos that were on his YouTube channel are now gone. A lot of the original where, hi, this is MK Davis, and he's talking for fucking 3 hours about this thing. A lot of those are gone. So he took them down. He obviously was getting around the copyright, or he was blowing right through the copyright for the PG film. I'm not sure what happened with that. But yeah, so that leads me right into my next question, which is the perfect segue. Is unless you have more to say about that, Tom, are you good with speaking your mind there? Or do you have any more?
Well, sure. In my opinion, MK basically, since the article came out, has been on big time damage control ever since, and he's just completely said, "Well, I don't really know. It's just a theory. How do we know anything? And how do we know Sasquatch is even there?" And he's kind of right there. He says, "How do we know Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson even shot that film? We only got their word for it. We don't know, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, I mean, there's a question here from Faith Walker, and it says, and it does speak to it, says, is using different filters altering, right? At 9:36, Bill, if you've got the question there. If you see it. Anybody see it? There you go. So Faith Walker asks, like you said, Tom, is using different filters altering?
When you alter images to make the water look blood red and the hands of an individual look blood red, and you actually say when you publish these altered stills that the water is blood red and the hands is blood red, that's hoaxing.
There you go. There you go. Speaking from a legend, from a gentleman that knew the gentleman. So yeah, and I agree with you. You know, when you push the evidence and you push it and you especially when it comes to blood red, it's yeah. So that leads me to the next segment. What I'm talking about is, 2021 is securely nestled in the decade of, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, subreddit, all that shit. Social media platforms, what do you think? You think that they bring out the best or they bring out the worst in Bigfooting?
In a lot of ways, it's the worst thing that ever happened, this research, because it's a soapbox for every snake oil salesman out there. We got a guy up here named Isdall who goes by How to Hunt. He was the last guy to bring this massacre up all over again.
Pro Guide 66. I have his book. I bought his book because it's 317 pages and only 11 were written by him. Everything else was copied and pasted emails. So what's your opinion on Steve? Is it now? Are you familiar with Justin Chernopinski? His work?
No.
Justin does stuff up in the Nordegg area. He has
Alberta boy.
Yeah. He does Mountain Beast Mysteries is his channel. He does a lot of boots on the ground stuff. He's out there a lot.
I apologize. Yes, I do. I now remember him. Yes.
Okay. But he does a lot of great work. So for every Steve Isidol, there is a Justin Chernopinski, and then there's a Thomas Steenberg that do the real work. So you're saying that the bullshit that comes along with social media outweighs the more people interested in it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think Steve Isidol, he was a hunting guide, and when grizzly bear hunting was banned, that was a big hunk of his income taken away, and I think he's just desperately trying to find a way to make his YouTube page pay off.
Well, he's on fire. I mean, Jesus Christ.
And all he does is read what emails that are sent to him, and he reads it. That's his whole thing, and he lives up there, so all he has to do is walk out his back door, and he's got beautiful mountains all around him all the time, and that's what he does. And he brings, and there's so much of that on the internet. I think a lot of it, what I call inmates running the asylum, they don't want to see this mystery solved one way or the other. They like it the way it is, the endless merry-go-round, so they can run around acting like Mulder and Scully and get their 15 minutes of fame or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So he was a grizzly bear guide.
Yeah, a hunting guide. Grizzly bears was a big part of it, apparently. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he was on the BC hunting page for years before he ever got into the Sasquatch.
Now, what are your thoughts? You got this. Do you get Expedition Bigfoot up there?
I've heard.
Do you watch any of that shit? Do you watch any of that shit?
I've watched a few episodes here and there that's been popped up on YouTube. The same problem with finding Bigfoot before it. It's not the guys in it that's the problem. It's producers trying to make something exciting happen so there's an audience for another season. That's the biggest problem with them. I don't know, but I understand why. Because if they ever did a documentary the way I think it should be done, it wouldn't last more than one season because the whole general population to give Sasquatch 15 minutes of thought a year would lose interest and wouldn't watch.
It's it's funny because Charlie can talk about this as well. Is we're in the middle of putting together a documentary called Devil's Road, and I got the idea last spring. Was it, Charlie?
Yeah, it was right after school.
And the original thing was going to get the guys together. We're going to go out. We're going to shoot a bunch of footage of these guys looking for Bigfoot. I'm going to edit it. We're going to put it out on Amazon, and it's going to be cool. The problem is that's freaking boring. Sitting out there doing the real research, right, Charlie? I mean,
well, plus we were in the East Coast, so we're driving 5-6 hours to sit in the woods.
Yeah,
for 5-6 hours.
And a lot of these shows and Finding Bigfoot makes Finding Bigfoot look like a Smithsonian special. The best way to describe most of them is Duck Dynasty meets Bigfoot.
It really is. It's kind of like, and I was watching what happens here, and I'm not sure if I'm probably sure they do it in Canada, is when the season 2 of Expedition Bigfoot came out, they put the first 2 episodes out, and then what they do is they put the rest on pay-per-view, so you have to buy the streaming platform, the Discovery Plus platform. It's $5 or $6 a month, whatever. I chose not to do that because I really didn't care. So what they did is last night they had, I think it was, or Sunday night, they had, they were running some of the new episodes. So they put them back on regular TV. And I was watching it from strictly a production value of if you took the music, like the risers, the music risers, and the completely misedited and misappropriated takes, you have nothing. So they do that on purpose, and it is entertainment. It's not research. I think it's funny that it's there if it's supposed to be accurate, because supposedly these researchers, and I'm not. A lot of people say, "Well, you're just jealous. You want to be on the TV show." That might be the case. Maybe I am. Maybe I do want to be on the show. Maybe we asked Mike Merchant about that. But it's entertainment. It's not research. You're muted, Tom. There you go.
Oh, good. When finding Bigfoot, I was going to say how I didn't touch it. When Finding Bigfoot came up here in 2016 to do that episode, which is Squatch here, British Columbia or Washington, all the people that were in that town hall meeting were people from my files that I asked to go. And I had a long meeting with the people behind the cameras. Producers. I know most, yeah. And they said, hey, we're a show. Our top priority is to justify another season. The worst thing that can ever happen to us is we find Bigfoot. Yeah, and he admitted it. This is a show. It's entertainment. Maybe it will make people think a little bit. That was our whole thing. Yeah,
it does, and I'm not sure what the pay scale is, but it's kind of you have people like Sergeant Russ Cord there now that for some reason he's got his backpack just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. He's got like this 300-pound backpack that he carries around. But this person's going to have to come back out of this and host. Doesn't he host a conference? I mean, he's going to have to live with his critics and face them over a lot of the hoaxing of the stuff. And I don't know if that's worth it.
I don't know. I really haven't seen enough episodes of that to make an opinion. I know Russell Cord. He's good friends with Bob Gimlin. I know him. We get along, but I got to admit, I haven't seen too many episodes of his show, so I really can't comment. Yeah, I really can't comment on it.
So let's talk about On the Shoulders of Giants, talking old timers. How did you, with our dear friend Julie? I love Julie Wrench to death. She's a sweetheart. I know she's watching the show. Hi, Julie. She's going to be on with David Ellis in a couple of weeks. To go through some calls. How did you hook up with Julie? And tell us about the show, your concept, and where I really enjoy the show. I love the show, by the way. So let's talk about that.
Well, I first got in contact with Julie because I did, before her show came up, Monster X Radio. She was a guest host a couple of times I was on Monster X Radio. And Julie, it's all Julie's show. It was her idea. Mm-hmm. I just helped her out with it. And she had the idea of a show called On the Shoulders of Giants, referring to the old guard who are many are passing away, and I knew them all, and she just wanted these stories to get out before I pass away and they're all forgotten about. So that's how I met Julie. But the show On the Shoulders of Giants it's her brainchild. It's her show. I just helped co-host it for her. It's all her. She's a great lady from North Carolina. Serious researcher from the East Coast, and she's got a philosophy like mine: stick to the facts, every deviate the facts. And hey, that puts you in my good books.
Yeah, I mean, she's pulling. She was one of our first guests, and she was on, and she brought some of the crazy shit she's getting down there in the Uwharrie forest. Some of these howls and stuff that are out there is crazy. And she's going to come on with a bunch more that we're going to put on in a couple of weeks. But it was funny because the story behind that with me is I just had a surgery and I was laid up and I was kind of putzing around listening to stuff, and I found that podcast, I don't know, by mistake, and I really enjoyed it, and I listened to it, and it really got me into how a show should be done. No bullshit, straight up entertainment. Entertainment as far as the way you guys deliver your stories and stuff like that. How do you guys pick the stories and the shows? Because you never seem to run out of good stuff to talk about.
Well, fortunately, I know a lot of these people, so I asked them for her, and she's gotten quite a few herself. Like we're going to be doing, I think, our 29th episode next week. and it's going to be our first repeat guest. First time we've ever repeated anybody. It's going to be Steven Stuford again.
Nice.
Or as I call him, Angel Eyes.
Angel Eyes. Steve is on the show with us, and he's a great guy. So that's going to be. So when is that going to be? Say the date again, there, Tom.
Well, the show is scheduled for next week. Let me look it up for you. It's usually pre-recorded. It's going to be on the 23rd, and it'll probably be aired the following Sunday. She usually airs on the following Sunday. Yeah.
So make sure everybody go to your podcast, whatever podcast you are, and look up Monster Radio and look us Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. That's so. There was a funny documentary. I don't know if it was a funny documentary, but so how you haven't seen a Bigfoot, correct? You're muted again, Tom.
Yep, you've got it.
You're there.
You're good.
Am I touching something, or are you muting me?
It might be the producer because of the feedback, the echo. So,
okay.
So it's not a big deal. It's totally usable. So what I was saying is have you had a Class A? Have you seen a Sasquatch?
I don't know. In 2004, I had a fleeting glimpse of something. Finally, after all these years, it was 20 miles up the west side of Harrison Lake. I was taking John Miles back to the camp up there, and close to a mile away along a cut line with the big power lines to put through, I saw a jet black figure walk from the center of that cut line to the trees on the right-hand side. Now, remember, I stick to the facts, never deviating the facts. I saw a figure. It appeared to be jet black in color. It was walking upright, and it was big. But it was also almost a mile away, so I couldn't see detail. And I only saw it for about 8 seconds before it disappeared in the trees on the right-hand side. There wasn't even time to pick up the camera I had sitting beside me in my Land Rover, which I brought to a screeching halt, got out to take a picture, and it was gone. And I looked over at John, and I said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yes, I did." And we went up there, and I think if I put a 7-foot guy up there and went back to my vantage point, I would barely be able to see him at all. So the way I remember this thing was big even for a Sasquatch. So it was either a Sasquatch or it was a big, odd-looking man, one of the two. If that was a Sasquatch, I have seen one. If it was not, I still have not.
Real quick, Thomas. Vincent wants to know if you ever smelled a Sasquatch.
I have smelled a lot of strange odors in the woods, but I've never, ever seen what was making the smell. There was one time me and the late Bill Miller were out, and this is probably the most important one, a smell that just like rotting garbage hit us and almost knocked us off our feet. And I went walking around the woods to try and find it, thinking I'm going to find either discarded trash or something dead in there.
Yeah.
Didn't find a thing. And for some reason, after about 10 minutes, the smell started to dissipate, and it dissipated rather rapidly. And it was a still hot day. There was no wind or anything. And I think if it had been something dead in there or garbage, the smell wouldn't have dissipated so quickly. So what was it? I don't know. I mean, I've been close to black bears that smelled like high heaven. I've been close to black bears that had no smell at all. I don't think the Sasquatch is worse than any other hair-covered creature that hasn't walked through a river in the last 48 hours.
Sure.
Yeah.
So speaking of, you did a lot of work with Bill Miller. You run you run the Harrison Hot Springs Sasquatch Museum up there. I believe Bill started it with you. I know that your ass has been kicked by the COVID situation, but you want to fill in everybody about the museum, about what it's like, and I would think we have a picture of the outside of it we can throw up.
Well, it wasn't our idea. It was the idea of the Harrison Hot Springs Tourist Board. They wanted to do something. Bill Miller and I ever had an influence on Harrison was keeping the Sasquatch, its association with the Sasquatch mystery alive. Harrison has gone through periods where a lot of the people there feel we are too sophisticated to be associated with this Sasquatch nonsense. And there have been serious attempts to try and distance the town from the whole thing, but it never quite works. So we got together with a big town hall meeting, and all the top business owners, and they're all wondering, well, what are we going to do to try and increase tourism? I said, well, you've got something. You've had it forever. The Sasquatch, you can see some of them rolling their eyes. You talk to a lot of people who come here and what they're talking about and listen to them. They're talking about the Sasquatch and the Sasquatch sausage. They're not talking about cheese and wine tasting contests or sandcastles.
Wait, there's a cheese and wine tasting contest?
Yeah, and everything else they try to do there. And the tourist board, the guy who runs it now, he's a good guy, and he kind of listened to us. And again, he put in new Sasquatch welcome to Harrison Hot Springs statues, because really in BC, the only place that resembles what you find all over the Pacific Northwest United States is Harrison Hot Springs. Like you go to Northwest United States, Bigfoot's everywhere. There's statues here, Bigfoot restaurants. Come have our Bigfoot pizza. Come have our Bigfoot burgers. Here in British Columbia, other than Harrison Hot Springs, you never even know there was a legend.
Right.
Yeah. And Harrison's the only town like that. And I like to think Bill Miller and I had a great influence of keeping that going. The fact that John Green lived and died there. Yeah.
Now, is it open or is it still closed?
It was closed last time I was there. It may be open now. I haven't checked, but a few weeks ago it was still closed because of COVID. There's no admission charge. You just go in the information center and it's free.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no admission charge. So yeah, we it was their idea, and all the stuff came from us.
So you've authored 3 books, right? And you co-wrote 2 others. That's 5 freaking books on Sasquatch. That's a lot of reading material. I have 2 of them here. I've got In Search of Giants and Sasquatch, Bigfoot, The Continuing Mystery.
All right.
Tell me, putting all this stuff together. I mean, these are hundreds of witness accounts. Right? Where did you get all this information? Did they come to you? Did you get it from John Green? Where did you get all these reports? When I
was finally got posted out west of the Canadian Army, I tried to go to I requested the 3rd Battalion PBCLI, which was in Vancouver Island at the time. But the closest I could get was the 1st Battalion in Currie Barracks in Calgary. Mm-hmm. I took one look at the Rocky Mountains one day, and I saw them for the first time in my life, and it was a beautiful clear winter's day, and it almost looked like a phony movie backdrop from the 1950s. It was that clear. And I must have stood there and looked at it for 30 minutes. First time I'd ever seen them in my life. I said, well, there's no wall between British Columbia and Western Alberta. If they've been seen in eastern BC, they got to be seen here too. So what I did was I put an ad in the local Alberta press at the time. Sasquatch, if you believe you've had a sighting of this creature, contact Thomas Steenberg and the phone number I had at the time.
You put that in the paper?
Papers, advertisements, anything I could find. I ran it for quite a while. And I didn't think I'd get much result, but I swear to God, my phone was ringing almost on a nightly basis.
Really?
Yeah. That's how I met the late Vladimir Markotic, who's a professor of anthropology and archaeology at the University of Calgary. And through him, I met the late Grover Krantz. I met Bob Titmus. I met John Green and Rennie on my own, and that's how I basically got going. Basically, Vladimir and I were partners. He did the academic stuff, and I did the field research.
So, out of all the research and all those books, there has to be. Is there one? Is there one story that sticks out that you're like, damn, that was a good story?
Oh, there's several of them.
You want to tell us one?
Well, one of my favorites has got to be the Crandall campground incident in southwestern Alberta in the May long weekend of 1988. That's where 4 witnesses had a sighting of this thing, and they did the rare thing. They actually had the courage to report it to the park warden's office the next day. In Canada, in national parks, they're called wardens, not rangers. And the ranger at the time, Alan he told me he did everything he could to try and convince these people. They probably saw a bear standing up, etc. The usual. And they insisted. And Darren Gillis, one of the 4 witnesses, insisting on writing something out, even though they told him it wasn't necessary. He insisted. And as far as I know, that sighting report is still on file in the warden's office in Waterton Lakes National Park, and it's still there. And what we have is 4 witnesses. Two engineers, and the 2 women were school teachers. Susan Ray Adams and her then husband decided to walk down the trail and brush their teeth before turning in. And they walked down the narrow path, and all the light they had was in the public washroom facility, one little bulb, and something was standing on the trail between them and the washroom. and it let out a throaty groaning noise at him. Grunt, he described, like a bull letting out a hot air. Susan, being a nervous type, immediately ripped away from her husband, yelling something, blank, 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 that's a bear. And she went right back, but her husband kept his eye on it, and he just said he saw this figure move off to the trail to the left. And when the other two back at the campsite heard her yell bear, it was helter-skelter for the cars. You know, they had two cars there. Lock. He came back. He tried to get in the car next to his wife, but she had locked the door, and she wouldn't let him in. I guess somebody had to be sacrificed. So he ended up getting in the car with the other woman, and they turned on the headlights of their cars, and this thing walked in the area illuminated by the lights, and they watched it walk right to left, heading off towards Blackstone Brook. And it seemed to be caught by surprise by the lights, and was just intent on getting out of the area. And Darren Gillis got out of the car, and he said, "Oh, you know what that was? That was a blank by blank Sasquatch." And the two men wanted to go driving around the seat again. The two women wanted nothing to do with that. Matter of fact, Susan wanted to pack up and go back to Calgary. She had enough of camping. But they managed to calm her down. And they went driving around, and they ran into a pickup truck with 3 people in it. And they said they had seen something strange, and they were trying to see it again. So it may be a case here where rather than 4 witnesses, we actually have 7.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but these 3 people didn't report it, and to this day, I don't know who they were. I was never able to track them down. Now, part of me, stick to the facts, every day with the facts, wondered, did these 3 people in the pickup pull something off and were just hanging around to see if they've been successful?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to consider that. But no, according to I went and interviewed all 4 of these witnesses separately, and I'll never convince them that it was some guy in a clumsy costume.
Right.
It was incredible what they saw. And I interviewed all 4. I think this case one day will be listed as one of the classic tales, really. It's called the Crandall Campground. It's in Waterton Lakes National Park, 1988.
Awesome. So you've been doing this for decades. Your opinion, straight up, Bigfoot a myth, or is it? Do you think it's the real deal? And do you think it's going to be solved before you leave us? Before you head up to the great wherever the hell you want to go when you pass on, Tom. Since you're one of the old guys, I'm not kicking you out yet, Tom. But I'm saying, what do you think?
I'm 90% convinced the Sasquatch does indeed exist, and it's a flesh and blood animal living in the woods of North America. Yes, 90%. I keep 10% off in case I'm wrong. But I'll tell you, there's one thing that really bothers me. Really, really bothers me. You've heard of Banff National Park?
Yep.
Yeah, in Alberta?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Trans-Canada Highway that runs between Banff and Lake Louise, they tried what they called a red flag program to get people to slow down because too many animals were getting killed. And it was horrible to see all these little red flags, everything from a squirrel to a grizzly bear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, people would not slow down. So what they did, they finally decided, okay, we're going to build wildlife fences on both sides of the highway and wildlife tunnels.
I've seen those tunnels. I've traveled that before.
They got the same thing on the Coquihalla Highway and the Ellensburg Pass in Washington now. And they realized that a lot of the animals weren't using the tunnels, so they built overpasses and covered them with trees. Now, they've been covering these tunnels and overpasses in Banff National Park in Alberta since the mid-1990s. And they've picked up footage of every animal you can think of. They've even got footage of strange people. But they've only got footage of every animal you can think of, except guess what?
The
big guy. That bothers the hell out of me because I personally looked into several reports even in and on the highway before the fences were built. Matter of fact, the warden's office in Banff National Park used to give me a ring when something strange happened so I could talk to them and deal with it. I had a really good relationship with them there. And the RCMP as well. But it really bothers me. Now, the only out of this is those cameras are not there 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. They put them out a week here, a week there. Blah, blah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but since the mid-1990s, they do have footage of everything you can think of, except guess what?
Do you think they're editing the footage and keeping it?
No, I don't believe in any government conspiracy.
Okay, good.
I don't buy that for a minute.
Well, you've been down to Washington State, and you know that they have an I-5, they've got an I-90, they have a lot of the cameras, and they once in a while they get a strange thing, and the news will run with it to Bigfoot. But those DOT cameras, I think, do run 24 hours a day. I think they're for the chain restrictions with the snow, and I'm surprised that the Canadian the highway there doesn't have cameras. Well, maybe the cameras just aren't running on the overpasses. I see what you mean for 24 hours a day. But so what do you got? You got a ton of contacts here. I want to put up your contact screen because what do you have going on for 2021 COVID if it cooperates? What are your plans there, Tom?
What was the question again?
For 2021, what do you got planned? Any expeditions?
We got 2 big expeditions coming up. One in the Norris Creek region, and one somewhere up the west coast of Harrison Lake. I'm not going to say where, because exactly where, because we don't want anyone coming up there to try to play tricks. Yeah, but this one expedition will be about a week long in, I'll just say the Norris region, and the next one, some of the guys are going to be out there almost 2 months, looking for hard evidence, and where a lot has been reported over the years, and we've had a lot of strange reports and cases, and it's really worth looking into. That's the 2 big things that I'm involved with that will be happening this summer, provided COVID doesn't get more complicated and everything doesn't get more complicated.
Will you keep us informed, and will you come back on the show maybe late fall and let us know how your season went, Tom?
Sure, you ought to talk to Keith Kazarian, who's basically running that big expedition for 60 days, and I could tell you all about the other one.
Yeah, if you can get him in touch with me or get me in touch with him, I'd love to do that. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. The hour has completely flown by. Charlie, next time, Charlie, you don't need to talk as much.
Well, I love listening to Thomas. Although Thomas, I didn't hear your impersonation of a Renee Dahinden. I was looking forward to it all night. One of the podcasts I listened to, you did a great impersonation of him. So
all I got to say to you, Chuck, is do this. If you got a possible sensor, go out and get the rocks out of your head. Just go grab them.
Perfect. Nailed it.
On that note, thank you, Tom Steenberg. Now, before we sign off, I just want to let you know that we here at the CARC appreciate all of you out there watching and taking part in the Super Chat. And if you dug deep and made a donation, thanks. If you liked what you saw tonight, and even if you didn't, be sure to join our Facebook group, which is the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective. Subscribe to Tom's YouTube channel, which is Thomas Steenberg. His website is thomassteenberg.com. Upcoming show, we've got June 29th. We've got cryptozoologist and author Ken Irish will be with the guys. I'm taking a couple weeks off to have some work done on my spine, and we'll be back July 28th with Monster Trek author and Professor Joe Gazzondi. Until then, be good, stay safe, keep on squashing. Be good, stay safe, keep on squatching, and say goodnight, Bill. Good night from behind tall trees. If you enjoyed the previous program, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment.